Well, hello, spooky review peoples. Spooky Battalion.
Hello, and welcome back to the Spooky Review Club. Enough of my nerdiness. I have a few things that I want to talk to you guys about today. Let me get comfortable here. Okay, so what I have for you today is a couple of films that are the lesser known films that you can watch. And I believe all of them are free, but I'll cover that. And then I also have a couple of audiobooks that I listened to, and I touched on one in the last spooky review, but I hadn't finished it, and so I want to actually give it a review. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the movies. The first one that I want to talk to you about is a free movie on YouTube, and it's called Murder Mansion. And this was done in 1972. I'm going to put the links down below of where you can get these movies if the link is available to me, or at minimum tell you where you can get them. This movie was very interesting. It was kind of a classic vampire duper's delight, and I'm not going to really explain the duper's delight part because that would give away too much of the story. But what I will say is, you see these kind of different people. They definitely spent some time letting you get to know the characters in the intro. And back in the old classic movies, they really took their time with, all their credits. But the way that they did it back in the day was they actually started almost like started the movie, and they had the credits rolling as you're watching it. So you might be 5-10 minutes into the movie and you're still seeing credits on the screen. This one is kind of the same way, where the credits are coming up, but they're actually starting the movie and they're showing you the different characters and how they all intersect. So you have these different types of characters. You have, the stuffy professor types. You have a tragedy that happened with one of the professionals, that was obviously rich. You have marriage dynamics going on here, and then you also have, the guy that's coming in on the motorcycle, and he's supposed to be kind of the rogue person, and in the movie he turns out to be the one that I liked the most, right? Because the ones that were more the wild ones in society, they actually had more moral fortitude than the rest of them did. And you get to see this as it unfolds. And I didn't really know where this was going. I find these movies and I have no idea what they're about. I just watch them if they seem interesting to me. Something captures my eyes. The mansion aspects of it and the visuals are really cool. I always like a good scary movie in a mansion. And so that part of it was really fun. The almost overacting that's done because they didn't have all this, technology to make things or theatrical, I guess I should say. And so, they use their acting, and they use the actual set of where they're at, and they use shadows and different things, and that imparts to you what's going on, and even using some of the props, and you could look at certain props and go, oh my gosh, that was so, like, you could see it was so fake. But remember, back in the day, that was what they did, and there's something so cult classic about these movies. So with this movie, I'm not going to tell you all of the story. I'm going to tell you that it's definitely worth watching. It's a really fun movie to watch, and I gave it a 4.5 star. I don't know why I didn't give it a full 5, but I really did enjoy watching it, and it's one that I probably would watch again and have my husband watch it with me, because I did enjoy it, and it was funny. It was funny, and at no point did I feel scared. It was more like just watching what's really going on. And the story, I have to say, some of the story is still a mystery to me. Like, I watched it and I almost feel like I need to watch it again to really isolate now again the storyline, because there is kind of a rich plot happening, and there's a lot of betrayal type of stuff that's happening in the story, but you don't really know what's going on until the very end. And I really like it for the fact that there is a plot, because sometimes in movies today, the plots are so predictable that you know exactly what's going on. And in this one, I feel like, you know, it all seemed really spread out and you had to figure out what was going on. And I think maybe I gave a half a point off because I was still kind of confused at the very end, but there were some gory aspects of it. They don't really show you too much. It's very proppy the way that it's done, but that's kind of the beauty of it. So I would definitely give that one a 4.5 stars, and I think it's worth watching. So I'm going to leave that link in the description below so you can check it out. Maybe you can put it on your weekend movie list with whoever you want to spend some time with. Okay, we're going to talk about a movie that isn't scary, but it is a movie about someone really important in history. And this is the story of Mary Shelley. Now, for those of you who don't know who Mary Shelley is, I'm going to get some of my coffee here. Mary Shelley is the writer of Frankenstein, and this story is free on Pluto. You can get it on a bunch of different platforms, but for me anyway, it was free on Pluto. So look and see where you can get it for free. And Pluto, at the time that I'm saying this, is offering it for free, but that may not always be the case. So the best thing to do is just pull it up on your smart TV, and they will put the first one on the list would be where it's free if it's offered free. We all know about Frankenstein, and I think because we're so saturated with the knowledge of Frankenstein that a lot of times when it's so saturated like that, where it's just something everybody knows, we often don't look deeper into the story of its origins. And I find this story very, very fascinating, because it was at a time where it wasn't popular to be a free thinker or an independent person. It wasn't something, it was scandalous if you did not follow the traditions of how people got married and how they lived their lives, and society, or to follow society's rules. And Mary Shelley really came from a household that were free thinkers, and they were a bit scandalous. And Mary Shelley's mother died shortly after she was born, but it said that she, every day she went and she wrote, and she sat and wrote in her journal, and she sat on the cemetery of her mother. And a lot of big moments for her, happened while she was at the cemetery. So obviously longing for her mother, and that creates this loneliness and longing in her. And a lot of this went into her writing of Frankenstein, and there's so much to this story, because women back then were often not allowed to, even if they wrote a good story, which Mary Shelley wrote an amazing story. By the time she waited a long time to write it. And when she finally wrote it, she had a lot of pain in her own life that went into the writing of Frankenstein and what Frankenstein felt. And, and feeling like a creature.
You recognize Victor Frankenstein? This is no ghost story. It chilled me to the bone. You must get your story published, Mary.
Curious subject matter for a young lady.
Are you suggesting the work belongs to Mr. Shelley? It is my story.
And you dare question a woman's ability.
It's a heartbreaking story, but it also is a story that is hopeful too, because at the end of the day, her name did get put on there, and there was this whole thing because her mother was a writer, and she wrote about women's rights at a time where that wasn't popular. Her father it's said that he was a philosopher, and in the movie, he owned a small bookstore that was always struggling, and that probably had a lot to do with the fact of, his life and who he was. I feel like back in the day, if you had any kind of blemish on your past, it was really carried into whatever your future was. People just held on to that and gossiped about stuff like that. So I don't know enough about the details of that. I would need to really read the biography because, in movies they embellish things, and they fill in the gaps. But the essence of the story and her life with her husband and all of that, they got him to write the foreword of the story, and people assumed that it was him that wrote it. She, tried to get published, and it was a great story, and a lot of people refused to publish her because that's not what women should be writing about. Right? So it wasn't even, this is an amazing story. It's what women could and couldn't write about. And finally, when she was able to get it published, it was under the understanding that she would get it published only if her name was anonymous, and she was not allowed to put her name. And this is where, her husband, who was also a writer of poems, he was asked to kind of write the foreword or something like that in the beginning, and people would assume that it was his work. And later, her father, who owned a bookstore, he actually had it reprinted again and made sure to put her name on it so that she was cataloged throughout the history, and we were able to trace it back that it was actually her. And had he not done that, we may never know, that the person who wrote Frankenstein was a woman. So I just think it's an amazing story. It's fascinating because Lord Byron is in it, and is that his name? Lord Byron, not Lord Byron. Lord Byron is in it, and he's a whole other story, just a very rogue artistic person. Back in the days too, they were artists, and artists were kind of outcast to society because they lived how they wanted to live. And nowadays we look at writers differently. They can be in high society, and they aren't necessarily rogue individuals, but back in the day, they really pushed their ideals out there, and they were okay with being outcasts and kind of paved the way for other people to be free thinkers. It's like it just keeps going on and on. For one generation to the next, provides a pathway to be yourself and be an artist if that's what you are. Okay, so with that movie, I gave that movie a 5-star. I thought it was great. Now what I want to do is talk about the audiobooks that I listened to. And I'm going to start with the one that I touched on in our last Spooky Review Club, but I hadn't finished it yet, and I finished it now, so I want to review that one. 12 Nights at Rotter House by J.W.Ocker. Now, if you're on Audible and have the app, you can get this for free. And I was really surprised. I'm actually going to give this a 5-star review. It was fascinating. I loved the story. It's about a guy who's a book writer, and he's never seen anything in the paranormal, but he wants to believe, and he has a friend that there's some kind of conflict, but we don't know, and we kind of get the conflict a little at a time. But his friend ends up showing up at this house, and he had to really go through a lot to talk to the current owner. The house is like a house where there's been a lot of death in, and it's abandoned basically right now, but somebody just recently bought it. And the beginning is he goes through this whole thing of trying to convince her why she should let him go in, because she's planning on turning it into a bed and breakfast, and she doesn't want it to be a joke. So he really has to convince her, and he has a book that he's published already, although it didn't do much. so he does have some background in being published, and he's able to maneuver getting her to allow him to go in and just kind of see if he can pick up on anything. And he is not a believer, but he wants to believe, but he's very rational, and he's obviously going to not accept any little noise in the house as being paranormal. He wants to study it. And he has a partner that used to help him with this, and we get to see that there's been some kind of conflict, but we don't know what the conflict is. And we get little bits of that as the story goes on, and it's pretty what should I say, could be kind of scandalous in nature for some people who are new to these concepts. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm just going to tell you that it's a very good story, and you can see the dilemma that they're both going through, and you or anybody else is not going to have any idea how to solve the problem that they're going through. So it created this fascination to be able to watch this, like, or I should say, listen to how do they get through this level of conflict, and is it even possible to remain friends after what you hear happened in their life. And you go through this whole story, and there's so much, and there's a lot of paranormal sounds, and there's things that happen that are spooky in nature, and you're getting a history of the house and the people that have lived and died in that house as you go. So that's very fun and fascinating to hear all the different people that have lived there and how they died, and whether or not that noise they heard, or this little interaction that they're having in the house is from that person, right? So it's classic spooky in that sense. The ending, though, I was getting a sense of really what was going on towards the very end of the book. I had this inkling of what it was, but I wasn't sure until the very end. And then I'm like, oh my God, that it got me. I loved this book, and the fact that it's free on Audible is amazing to me. So I highly recommend it. I gave it a 5-star review. I thought it was a really good book, and definitely as a free book. I mean, that's amazing that it's for free, because it's really well written, and it had me going, and all the threads to the very end, like all the interactions, all the storylines and the plots, everything was there. So I give that one a 5-star review, and I highly recommend that you go on to Audible and you get that book for free. Okay, the next one I want to talk to is, you guys heard that I'm reading all the series of Lee Mountford. I'm a new fan of his, and I really enjoy reading series. I'm a writer of series book. I write the Rickaby Lane series, and I've got 2 out, and I've got another one coming. Of course, all those links will be below too. So I'm fascinated with reading and supporting other authors who are writing series. So I started reading Lee Mountford's, and I'm on book 3 of his series, and it's called The Haunted Series. Again, the links will be down below for you to get this book and to check out the entire series. This one I listened to on Audible. Now, the story, I want to tell you that the story is fascinating, and it's obviously a continuation of this mansion, or this manor that has been inherited by Sarah. And I'm not going to tell you in book 2 what happened. I'm just going to say that Sarah is now looking for investigators to come in because she is trying to save her sister. Okay, and I'm not going to say too much because I feel like you need to read the series to get into it. And she has these paranormal investigators that we've talked about before in my other reviews, right? Because I read the Purgatory haunted series, Purgatory, or not Purgatory, but I forget what the other names of the other books that I read. Book 1 and 2, and then I did like a little. I read an additional book that was about something that happened prior with a paranormal research group that came in, and Lee had been offering that for free to read it. I actually got it on Audible and just listened to it, and I loved it. I thought it was great. So I went and I got this one, book 3 on Audible, which is the Haunted Series, Purgatory, book 3 of Lee Mountford. The story is really good. It's definitely a continuation, and helps you it helps you to see what's going to happen next, and the ending was really great and prepped you for the next book, and I really liked it. My only problem that I had with this book was listening to it on Audible and listening to the voice actor. When I first heard his voice before, I was kind of iffy on it to begin with. I believe I read 1 and 2, and then I can't remember now. I think I read hard copies 1 and 2, and I did the other, the side book. I did that one on Audible. So I paid to do the Audible, and I heard his voice, and it took me a minute to get used to him, but it was fine because there was only a few characters at a time. It was like Sarah and David were the ones talking back and forth. But when it got into this one, book 3, and all the paranormal researchers came into the house, he had to do it was very heavy in dialogue, and he had to do a lot of different voices. And I just found his voice in his overacting in all the characters and doing the female characters, but even some of the male characters. And he has a British accent. It was overacted and it was annoying. Like, I almost stopped at part of it and was like, I don't know if I can keep listening to his voice acting in this. It's so, it just, how can I explain? The way that he was talking as a female was so, it just sounded really, and then, I don't know. Like when he was using other voices from the other guy. I'm not joking. He was literally talking like that. I don't want to go in there. It was so annoying to me that I almost didn't make it into the book. And then the when he was doing the female voices, it was so overacted, and it was so like when you know that you're listening to a guy pretending to talk in a girl voice. It was so annoying to me that I knocked off a whole star because I couldn't handle his voice. And I just decided after this audible book that I would from now on read his books, because I can't stand the voice of the voice actor. This is so important. If you're an author and you're listening to this and you're going to put your book on Audible, be careful with who you pick. I mean, really think of the voice of the character and pick a voice actor that has the voice that you heard in your head when you were writing it, right? And I know a lot of writers are following this too. So when I picked my Audible voice actress for, well, I could just say voice actor for the Ricopee Lane series, I picked a voice that, because most of the books are from the point of view, well, they're all from the point of view of my main character, Johanna, or Jo. And in my head, I know what she sounds like. So I picked somebody who had a voice like her. And the other thing too is, you know, when someone is doing voices of other characters, you know, they're with a good voice actor, you're able to give notes, you know, and I was able to give notes like, there's part of what you're doing with her voice on this one, I want you to, you know, I want it to sound like this, or giving suggestions by maybe in your head they sound like someone else in history, and you can give them a video and say, I want you to sound someone like this, or talk measured like this. There's so much to it. I happen to have an amazing voice actor that is going to be doing all of my books. I understand why Lee Mountford kept Hannibal is his name. He has them for all his books. He's happy with it. It's good to keep the same voice actor with all of your books for cohesion. I just found that his voice is, I just couldn't handle it when he's doing too many dialogues. The good news is that at a certain point, only a certain amount of researchers decide to come back to the house, and that meant that there was only, you know, again, like 2 to 3 voices that he was doing at a time, and mostly 2 at a time, and it worked out really good where when he's only doing 2 voices, I can manage it. But when he's doing too many, it's just so annoying. And it's not believable, and it just so distracting. It kept me from like being able to focus. But at the end, because of the lesser amount of people in the story, at least for a short period of time, I was able to get back on track. The end of the book really picks up speed, and there's more action, which means that there's more telling about what's happening in visuals versus him doing constant dialogue. And I think that all kind of brought me back. In most haunted thrillers and horror fiction, towards the end of the book, the pace is really going to pick up. And so, long story short, I listen to the audio sampler before you get the Audible, if you decide to do that, and determine whether or not that voice is something that you can handle. If you can't handle that voice, just get it on, get a regular print book or get it on Kindle, however you like to read your books. And Lee Mountford is a fantastic author. I highly recommend him. So on that particular book, I gave him a 4 stars. Now I've purchased the print book, and that's coming to me for book 4, which is called Possession. And it's really a great next step to what's happening, and it's getting fantastic reviews. I will say too that other reviewers, before I got this Audible for this particular book, I did read other people who had an issue with Hannibal's voice. And so if you're one of those people that just voices are really like you just can't move forward if someone has a certain type of voice, then just get it in Kindle or print. It isn't an indication of Lee's story at all, because Lee's story writing is perfection. He's amazing. I can't give him enough praise, and so I'm really excited to get through this entire season this entire series of books. So keep following me here, because I'm going to break down all of these series without giving you any spoilers of the story. And oh my goodness, you guys, that's all for this week's spooky review. So if you liked it, make sure you hit subscribe and that you hit the like button. And just keep coming back. Now you can follow me on SufaniWisemanGarza.com, and of course all the links are below. You can actually watch all the videos and see them all in order, because I label them. So if you want to see them all in one spot, go to www.SufaniWisemanGarza.com. The link is in the description below. Go to the Spooky Review Club and you can see it there. There's also ways for you to support the show if you want to do that. All the shows are going to be free, but if you want to get any extra content, you can go to Patreon and you can support there. So without further ado, you guys, you have been a spooky good bats, very good bats, sitting and listening to all my stories. And I will see you guys next time on the Spooky Review Club. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.